Doesn't. All right, welcome in everybody on the heels of a great night of action in the Sweet 16 in the 2024 NCAA basketball tournament. We are here on College Basketball Coast to Coast. It is a live recap as we come your way this evening, just after midnight Eastern time for me, TJ Reeves, along with Jason Powers, my wingman here. We're both based in the Tampa Bay area. We've got a lot to cover and a lot to go over tonight. Whether you're seeing us on the platforms of College Basketball Coast to Coast, the Twitter handle CBB Coast to Coast with the number 2 in it, College Basketball Coast to Coast YouTube page, Facebook, etc. We're live with you. Perhaps you're hearing us after the fact in podcast form on the College Basketball Coast to Coast podcast feed or on the TuneIn channel streaming after the fact at College Basketball Coast to Coast. Thank you for finding us. Jason, we have seen UConn roll. The defending champs look very much the part. We're going to talk a lot about that as this recap show goes on. And we have seen a tremendous pair of wins for Clemson over Arizona out in Los Angeles. And then Alabama just concluded a great finish to defeat the top seed North Carolina. Goodbye, number 1. Goodbye, number 2 in the West Regional. So, Jason, welcome in and some thoughts as we bring you in here on what we've seen so far Thursday.
West bracket blown up
for a lot of people.
I mean, I don't think anybody. I'd like to see somebody's bracket with Clemson and Alabama in the Elite Eight. I don't think there are too many of those out there, to be honest with you. But give them credit, both those teams, and we'll set up a rematch. I believe they played earlier in the year in Tuscaloosa.
Correct.
Clemson won.
Correct.
So very interesting, a little rematch, a little storyline there. But what a job by Alabama! I thought they were on the ropes. They were up that game, that Alabama Carolina game. What a game of runs. A lot of 7 and 8 point runs. Carolina was up 5 late. You thought the game was over in the last 3 minutes, and then Alabama was behind Grant Nelson. What a performance by him in the last second half, in that second half, especially in the last 6 minutes by Nelson. Tremendous performance, and what a gutty win there for Nate Oates. First time they've gotten to the Elite, I believe, in 21 years?
Correct. Since Mark Gottfried's Crimson Tide, and that's the only other time in school history, 2004, so 20 years. Ironically, losing to UConn that year, who went on to win the national title in the Elite Eight game. UConn is obviously in a different section of the bracket in the East Regional, but Alabama is there, as you made mention of. When the chips were down, they outplayed North Carolina. What a first half. Just a track meet first half. Then it became more of a grind. And as you made mention of, North Carolina had a couple of chances. They took a dumb shot, a lot of dumb shots tonight.
Withers, terrible three-pointer by Withers.
Terrible three-pointer with the lead late in the game. It allowed Alabama to come down and get a hoop. And then when R.J. Davis got his shot blocked, Alabama went to the other end and got free throws. And then the closing possession, down 2. Again, R.J. Davis trying to take it at Nelson and the bigger players. It didn't work. Nelson made free throws again at the other end. And the end result is Alabama moves through. So 2 upsets. Congrats to Clemson. Congrats to Alabama in getting this done. So in any event, thank you for finding us here in the recap mode on Thursday night. We also are going to look ahead a little bit to Friday. Adam Zagoria will be here from NJ.com and the Zags blog, zagsblog.com. Adam was on scene at the East Regional in Boston and watched UConn just obliterate San Diego State, especially in the second half of the game. Jason, in your mind, why was that so one-sided tonight for Connecticut?
I think with San Diego State, you hate to say this, they only have one way to win. They don't have multiple ways they can win. And if Ledee doesn't have a huge game, they're just not going to be able to score enough points. I mean, Ledee had a good first half, scored, I believe, 15 in the first half. But again, you and I have seen that team in person. They just don't have a lot of playmakers outside of Ledee. Parrish, is a good player, not great. Trammell, and then you had the Butler, the point guard. Just not enough offense. They just can't win. They can't win any more than one way other than in the low post with Ledee. And if he doesn't dominate, they're in big trouble.
One thing I'm going to talk to Adam about, and this became apparent, but I want your opinion. They were still in the game, but rebounding on the defensive end, they were pitiful at trying to grab loose balls, second chances, third chances,
Right.
and UConn just kept making them pay with made shot, made threes, and suddenly a 10-point game is 18, is 22, and it's over.
Yeah, I mean, in UConn, you look at the box score, UConn, 3 guys with 16 plus points. I mean, that's and Klingen's not one of them. You don't even need much out of Klingen to still dominate the game. When you got 3 different guys that can get you 18 to 20 on a given night, and all 3 of them get 16 plus in the same night, you're probably not going to lose. And again, San Diego State's just very limited offensively. They're not a great shooting team to begin with. And again, if Ladid, I mean, even if Ladid scores 30, they're still going to struggle to beat good teams sometimes.
Very true. Good stuff. Again, there's one game still remaining. That's the second game in Boston where the winner gets UConn. That is Illinois right now at the under 4-minute timeout, leading by 62 to 56. Terrence Shannon, the star player, had a big first half with 16, but Jason, he's been in some foul trouble. Iowa State has climbed back in this game in part because of that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, obviously, we know what Shannon is. He's an All-American Player of the Year kind of candidate, and especially in the Big Ten, best scorer in the tournament. I mean, you've seen this guy's an NBA player. He got 4 fouls at about the 12, 13-minute mark. Iowa State got the lead down to 2, but could not overtake them, and now Illinois is up 6 and going to the line here with about 3.25, 3:20 left in the game here. So, again, give Illinois credit. Some dumb shots by Iowa State. They're not a great offensive team. We know that. Great defensively, but we'll see what happens here in this last 3.5 minutes.
You use the phrase dumb shots. How many dumb shots did Arizona take for a lot of the game tonight? They got the lead a couple of times briefly, but good Lord, dumb shot after dumb shot for them. We saw a slew of bad shots from San Diego State in their loss. Even in this Alabama-North Carolina game, questionable shots by both teams, but you can't say enough about Nate Oates' team. They have won a bunch over the course of his tenure. But here tonight, as sweet a victory as he has had, because they just outplayed North Carolina when it mattered the most. Sears, tremendous off the dribbled penetration, the 3-pointers. Nelson, the transfer from North Dakota State, was also equally outstanding with a couple of made buckets and a big 3.
Rylan Griffin was huge.
How about that? With those threes,
he and Grant Nelson. Sears had a good game. He was not sensational point wise, but Nelson and Griffin were the difference makers on the offensive end. And then you got some good contribution from Estrada as well. So I thought they were cooked. They were down 6 or 8 early. They were down 8 at the half. They were down 6 or 8 late in the game. That style of play. That's what the beauty is. That style of play, they can score in spurts, like you've mentioned before. They can score 8 or 12 points in a 3-minute span.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you're never out of it.
And come roaring back. You mentioned Rylan Griffin, 19 for him, 5 3-pointers. Nelson's 24 is a season high, his Alabama career high. He had more than that in a game at North Dakota State. They got 43 points from those guys to help them win 89-87. Another big factor in this game, R.J. Davis, not very good from the floor for a lot of it. He had a couple of big plays late, but in the final couple of moments, he's trying to take the ball almost hero ball
into the trees. A guy
foot taller than him, and it's not going to work. It didn't work either time, and North Carolina's now got all off season to think about that, where it was the clutch moment and the clutch shot. And so the Tide get the win by 2. They move through to play the Clemson Tigers, who again got it done against Arizona in the other game. The follow-up point, Jason.
Key little sequence in this game, and it's it happened probably 4 minutes to go. Baycott missed an uncontested dunk that turned into a bucket at the other end. A 4-point swing there on a uncontested dunk by Baycott. And then Withers shoots the terrible 3 at one end, and on the same possession on the back end, fouls Nelson on a 3-point play to really give Alabama that lead. So those two little sequences were huge.
This is why I have you here, because you're right. Great points by you. That may look, it may not look significant, and I know there were still plays to be made after the Baycott miss, but he misses and they get an immediate hoop at the other end. That swing meant a lot. And then the sequence, again, that they will be scrutinizing in Chapel Hill. I mean, they live and die on everything Carolina basketball on Tobacco Road. They will scrutinize the end of that game for the rest of this tournament and maybe for about 3 months. They'll be scrutinizing it in the media, in print, around the water cooler, at the bars, and wherever on what were those shots and what was that at the end of the game. So, again,
because
a lot
that
going on here.
bracket was wide open now. All you had to do was beat Clemson to go to the Final Four. In theory, that will be scrutinized because that you cannot have Withers take that shot under any circumstance at the end of the game in a tie game.
Again, the voice of Jason Powers. I'm TJ Reeves. We are with you live as the Illinois-Iowa State result is the only one still pending. We hope to have all the finals here before we're done on this live show. Again, we know the West matchup is Alabama-Clemson, as Jason referred to. And if you're just joining us, Clemson won a regular season matchup in Tuscaloosa. Now they rematch for a spot in the Final Four. Neither team has ever been in the Final Four. We got a brand new Final Four participant coming out of Clemson and Alabama. The other
How about
game,
our boy Chris Stewart? A little shout out to our guy Chris Stewart,
our man Chris Stewart, who was on with you and Mike Grace and company on the Press Box radio show this morning. Had been out in LA, and you guys got the chance to talk to him. What a moment right now for Alabama basketball, and for him to be on the call on the radio play-by-play. Chris's first foray in doing a postseason game as the voice of the Tide didn't work out so well in Los Angeles at the Rose Bowl. They win in overtime by Michigan. He comes back to LA, and so far so good. It works out by beating the 1 seed. Now finish it off on Saturday. Coming up in a bit here on the live show, and even if you're hearing us in the recap mode, you want to hear from these guests. Bart Heitch will be here. Bart is a former player on the Mississippi State Final Four team as a captain in the late 1990s. Does a great job along with Mike Grace, Jason, and everybody on the Press Box radio show, pressboxradio.com. Bart will be here with some more analysis on the Alabama win, and we'll look ahead to Tennessee and Creighton. He's got an SEC slant. Tennessee, Creighton, Midwest Regional coming up Friday night. Bart will have that. But, Jason, while we wait for the end of Illinois and Iowa State, why don't we go back to what happened in Boston and the victory by UConn tonight, a blowout win over San Diego State. Adam Zagoria, our insider, our analyst, right there, watching everything as it unfolded. Let's go to a conversation I had with him earlier in the evening in the postgame mode about the defending champs absolutely looking the part right now of possible repeat champions. Here's Adam Zagoria with us. All right, here he is. He saw it firsthand in Boston tonight as UConn obliterated San Diego State. Adam Zagoria, thank you for doing this. I've even been reading up on your NJ.com story. I mean, we are right here on it. Proactive, all about it, instantaneous on college basketball coast to coast. You saw it right there from courtside tonight. My feeling is that if that version of UConn is out there on Saturday and or in Arizona, tough, if not impossible to beat. What do you say to that?
Yeah, if they play like that, TJ, nobody's going to beat them. I mean, they won by 30 points against a team that was the, national runner-up last year. They've beaten San Diego State by 47 points in the 2 games they've played them in the tournament. I believe they've won their 9 NCAA tournament games now by an average of 22.8. I mean, none of these games are close.
And how about the stat? They have become the first team ever in the NCAA tournament to have 9 consecutive wins of 13 points or more. Nobody. Not even like you start contemplating John Wooden's championship runs. They never beat 9 opponents in a row by 13 or more. It's impressive. So it's not everything, but they looked really good. What did it come down to tonight in that arena? Was it the 3-point shooting? Was it the fact that San Diego State did not defensive rebound really at all in this game? Combination? What was it?
Yeah, I just think UConn, TJ, has too many weapons. They have more offensive weapons than any other team. I mean, and San Diego State got a pretty good game from Jaden Leday, 18 points, but he only had 3 in the second half. He had 15 in the first half. And UConn didn't even really, they got pretty much a bad game from Donovan Clingan, 4 of 9, 8 points, 8 rebounds. But, they got 17 from Tristan Newton, 16 and 11 from Steph Castle, who looks more and more like an NBA guard every day. I mean, the guy is just fun to watch. Really looks like an NBA player. And what I wrote about on NJ.com, the Rutgers fans probably hate it, but Rutgers transfer Cam Spencer, 18 points. I think he had 16 in the first half. And, he had the money quote here after the game. "We're not satisfied. We came here to win the national championship," Newton said. "It was a great win tonight, but we're already thinking about Saturday and moving on to the Final Four."
No doubt. And as you also wrote on NJ.com, he held up the three fingers after one of the three-pointers as if the crowd really needed to know that, the way this team shot the three so well. Adam Zagoria with us for a couple of more moments. Again, we don't know for sure the opponent as you and I are taping. It looks good for Illinois against Iowa State, but anything can happen. It's an NCAA tournament game, so we're not going to even get into that part of it. But again, just say something. You were around this for the run last year, as was I at the end. You're around it now. How are they alike? How are they different? Some of the same players, but not all the same players. Same coach, Danny Hurley, who's obviously done a tremendous job. How are they alike? How are they different to this point?
Yeah, I mean, it's just impressive. They lost 3 guys to the NBA. They're going to lose, a bunch of guys off this team to the NBA, but he's done a brilliant job in blending, one superstar freshman in Steph Castle with older returning guys like Caravan, Tristan Newton, Klingon, Hassan Diarra played very well tonight. And then, you bring in Cam Spencer, who might be the MVP of the team. He embodies Dan Hurley's passion and intensity. Andrea Hurley says he's Danny with blonde hair. And, guys like Cam Spencer and Steph Castle are hungry because they didn't win last year. They don't have a ring. So they want to get that ring. And, guys like Tristan Newton could have, 2 rings after this.
I thought it was interesting. Hurley told CBS, told Andy Katz on the court after the game when he was asked, why are you on such a roll since last NCAA tournament? And he said, I'm paraphrasing, we learned from some things we did wrong and some things that we needed to do better. Can you put your finger on what were they? It's hard to contemplate. What were they not doing right that they began to figure out last March, obviously?
Yeah, I'm not sure what he's saying there. I mean, he continually says we're bulletproof. We're a top 10 defensive team. They're playing great defense. And I think, offense in this tournament, everyone's pretty good defensively, but the offense really matters more. And, they're just, like I said, they got 5-6 guys on any night can go off. And, you got to give them credit for silencing the distractions. I mean, everyone's talking about winning back-to-back. It could be the first team since Florida in 06-07 to go back-to-back. And they embrace that. They want to do that, but they're also blocking out the distractions, and they're able to focus one game at a time. I mean, they just won this game by 30 points.
Yeah, not to be messed with for sure. Just one more here. Again, it's worth noting they are the first defending national champion to get to the Elite Eight since Florida. And I know you know that, and Florida won the whole thing. They got 3 more steps, obviously, to take here that will be a lot tougher. But give me an idea of the atmosphere. I mean, it looked like on TV, it's mostly UConn in that region, in that area. They own it right now, men's and women's programs, UConn men's and women's. But what was it like in the arena tonight in Boston? Electric, yes?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of big, huge pro UConn crowd. I just walked from the arena to the hotels. A lot of UConn fans spilling out. I mean, it's pouring rain here, but they're spilling out and, trying to go to the bars. And I'm sure they'll be, be happy celebrating all weekend. And, they know, I just talked to a couple people in the hotel. They know Donovan didn't play that well tonight. And, a couple people didn't play that well, and they still won by 30. So, look, it's a home game for UConn. They got their home fans here. Their fans can just drive. None of them have had to get on a plane for first 4 rounds.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's see if it continues. We'll find out. Keep up the great work. I appreciate you popping on after the UConn win tonight. Thank you, Adam Zagoria. Great stuff.
All right, TJ.
So there was Adam with us just a little while ago about the UConn victory, and man, great job by them. You can't emphasize enough. It's a 30-point blowout win as they pulled away through the whole second half. And I thought it was interesting that Cam Spencer, the Rutgers transfer, is leading them. Tristan Newton, a former East Carolina player, was a national championship hero for him in the Final Four last year. They have brought some different pieces in But I mean, Klingon back, Jason Powers, as I bring you back in. Caravan is back.
Didn't do much tonight. He didn't do much.
Klingon didn't have to do much either. But again, they look the part. We don't want to crown them. They don't have it yet, but they look the part right now heading into the weekend.
And you're right, they do. And the only thing that I have to have the question answered is, I think at some point in the next 3 games for them, they're going to be in a tight game with 4 minutes to go. How do they react and respond when they're in a game in the NCAA tournament that means something in the last 4 minutes? They've not been in that situation in a year and a half.
Of course,
2 years worth of tournaments.
Of course, we say that, and they've won 9 tournament games, as we were just saying with Adam, by an average of 13 points. They haven't really been in a close game,
right?
13 or more. So crazy how this is. I'm trying to recollect. I believe in the regional final with Gonzaga, that might have been fairly close last year in Las Vegas in the final 2 or 3 minutes, maybe. But other than that, they have really had distance, double figures, whatever. So you bring up a great point. What happens as we come into the final seconds here? If it's Illinois that puts this game away and it's an Illinois UConn battle, and it's a 1-possession game, they're not used to that, right?
They were a 5 seed last year. They weren't the 1 overall seed. They were a 5 seed, so they were not expected to be, a Final Four team. And for them to dominate as well as they did last year as a 5 seed, then they come back as the 1 seed. They lose several guys. I mean, they lose Sonogo. They lose the point guard, Andre Jackson. I mean, they just reload, and Danny Hurley has got it going like Calhoun did in the late 90s, early 2000s. They are rolling.
Yep, incredible job so far with work still to do. Now, an update here on college basketball coast to coast as you join us live. And again, if you're hearing us in podcast form or streaming on the TuneIn channel on the replay of the show, college basketball coast to coast, the channel, the podcast, we are doing this live Thursday night into Friday morning already Eastern time, where Illinois is trying to put away Iowa State. Terrence Shannon is at the foul line while we're talking for Illinois and has just made a key free throw to put them up by 4. Jason Shannon also had a steal and a dunk in the final 40 seconds of this game that was massive. What a story that we're going to get into a little more tonight, and apparently have more time to get into. That Terrence Shannon was suspended for sexual assault allegations, had to get a federal judge to reinstate him, and he may be about to lead Illinois into the Elite Eight with the clutch play at the end of the game here. Wow.
And Illinois had to play 5 or 6 critical minutes tonight with him on the bench with 4 fouls in a very tight game. Give Iowa State credit. They were down early. They pulled it within 2, couldn't get over the hump. And Shannon's like a Dalton Connect. He's a guy you can give the ball to and say, get out of the way, and they'll either get fouled or get a good shot. So, unless some catastrophe happens, Illinois is going to the Elite Eight.
They're up 5. They're in a timeout with about 6 seconds left. Shannon now with 29 in the game, had 16 in the first half. He scored a bunch here in the final 4 minutes with a made shot, some free throws. The steal and the dunk will be talked about a bunch. And again, this is no slouch Iowa State team as the 2 seed. Obviously, they won the Big 12 tournament. Hello. And Illinois has really outplayed them for the most part, wire to wire in this game tonight.
Very versatile big man. He can shoot. He can pass. He is a point forward kind of guy for them. They got Damask, the guard, the transfer from Southern Illinois. He's kind of a post-up guard. And then you got Shannon, who can create offense anytime he needs to on his own. So they're going to, from a matchup perspective, they're going to give Connecticut the biggest threat because they got multiple guys that can score points.
Again, they're still in a timeout. We'll keep an eyeball on Iowa State and Illinois and the end of this game. But why don't we bring in another analyst, a guy that has played at the highest level in this thing, former Mississippi State star and captain on the 96 Bulldog Final Four team. Love his insight. Love his work with you, with Mike Grace on the Press Box radio show that's heard 5 days a week, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern time. Hello, Bart Heitch, joining us here as part of college basketball coast to coast and our post-game coverage. What a night for a couple of Southern teams, Alabama winning, also Clemson winning.
Is this football? Are we talking the football playoff here?
No.
State powers. The SEC goes through Alabama.
Yeah. How about SEC, ACC, Alabama,
it's a
Clemson
final in Boston? It's a final.
Illinois has beaten Iowa State, so that's a final. They'll play UConn. But in Los Angeles, of all places, Alabama and Clemson will rematch for a spot in the Final Four. So, Bart Heitch, let's bring you in. Why did Alabama get it done against North Carolina, my friend?
They had to keep all the, like, Nate Oates is so big. Thanks y'all for having me, man. I love being on with you guys, man. I love
welcome.
that y'all cover basketball. It's awesome. Buck sideline guy covering basketball. That's great. Love that. Powers football guy covering basketball. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know your stuff, and that's why I love talking to y'all. So I've been on all week talking about how this is a perfect spot for Nate Oates in Alabama because they're underdogs now. The last couple of years, like last year coming in, they had all the noise with Brandon Miller and all the things that have happened, and they were 1 seed and all these expectations. They don't have expectations, and they're winning what they have to win. They were efficient in the half court, guys. Alabama's all about getting more shot attempts. They shot 11 less shot attempts than Carolina, and they were so efficient with their 2-point like shots and baskets But the defense, man, somehow in the last couple of weeks, like one thing that people don't give Nate Oates credit for is his scouting ability. Like they have been amazing. Now, the 2 matchups before North Carolina, very favorable. I think we all saw that as they played. But they just beat the number 1 seed, and Alabama for the first time has a chance to go to the Final 8. And none of us were talking about them, Powers. They lost 4 out of 5, but it's about getting hot at the right time. And how we're not talking about Mark Sears as the best player in this tournament, and like the fact that Nate Oates can go to Nelson when he hasn't one-on-one, like we talk about connect in the SEC. I mean, this team has a chance to get the Final Four, like for real.
And you knew he was a sneaky, smooth player for them, and I didn't realize he was as good as he is. He's crafty, and he's a lefty. Is the Estrada kid?
Yeah,
that kid is an excellent slasher. He's their 2-point guy. He's their mid-range, go to the floaters, and everybody on who they play keeps overplaying his right hand. They forget that he's left-handed.
For the last 3 seasons, Nate Oates has had at least 2 left-handed guys, Powers. We talked about this on the show, how I think Nate Oates is trying to find these left-handed guys to offset the defense and run a different way and run a different sane system. Nate Oates does not like those in-between shots. Don't get it twisted. He does not like those. But Estrada's so good at him. He's a senior guy. He's played a lot of games. It showed up tonight big time. But, like, in their half-court offense, the fact that you can give it to him, the fact that you can give it to Sears, that you can give it to Nelson now, they won without Reitzel. And Reitzel is their most versatile defender that can guard 4 positions. To win without him, like, let's say they go ahead and win and they get him back for the Final Four. Nobody's talking about Reitzel. He led the league in 3-point shooting. They won without that tonight. Yes. I'm just impressed with the fact of how Alabama does all the little things, TJ. They do all the little things that you have to do to win in every category, and it's showing up. And you just got to give Nate Oates credit, man.
And we wondered, could they win low-scoring slugfest type game? They did with Grand Canyon, albeit it's a double-digit seed. Now tonight, I mean, the way this game was going in the first half, it looked like a present-day NBA game that was going to finish like 130 to 129. But the game slowed down in the final 10, 12 minutes, and Alabama in the key moments and the key possessions made more plays than North Carolina. It's why they are alive. Again, you're hearing voices here, seeing us on social media, on the College Basketball Coast to Coast platforms, Twitter, YouTube. We're on Facebook as well tonight. If you're hearing us only in podcast form in the replay, TJ Reeves, Jason Powers, Bart Heitch is our guest. You find Bart at bheitch22, also heitchhoops.com. You hear him with Mike Grace on the 5-day-a-week Press Box morning show based out of Atlanta. Bart pops on and gives great insight with that. Let's give Clemson some props. We haven't talked enough about them on the recap. I know Jason's nodding along here. Same question. Why did they get it done against Arizona? Bart, what did you see?
Powers, wasn't it when Clemson, we got a rematch coming, that they beat Alabama at Alabama when I was like, that's the team that can give people problems because they're high-low. They guard in the half court. They've got guards that can create their own stuff. Great free throw shooting team. Clemson is elite defensively. And, like, the way that Brad has taught this, and I give Clemson credit for sticking with this guy for 15 years now. 15 years, and they didn't, like, there were 3 or 4 different chances to where he would always win games or get to the tournament or get to the NIT and then make a run. They're in the final 8 with a chance to win, to beat a team that they've already beaten. But it's their system. It's their style, man. They can make threes. They can play different ways. Did y'all see how he went zone with about 12 minutes to go and stuck with it? 2 out of the first 3 possessions, Clemson gave up baskets. They stayed with it. Young coaches out there, stay with it if you believe you're playing. End of the game, if you're an 80% free throw shoot team, 78 or better, it came down to that. It came down to rebounding. PJ Hall and Kesslin are a problem, guys. They're a problem when you can play inside and pitch it back out. And I like this zone. I think you're going to see Clemson play a lot of zone. I guess this sounds crazy, against Alabama. Alabama's biggest asset is how they can penetrate the basketball and create off of it. If you take all that middle stuff away from Alabama, they have a hard time. Now you got to get
them shoot 2-point floaters, make them shoot twos.
But Clemson, all right, here's my question to you guys. TJ Reeves, here's my question to you. Do you feel better if you're Clemson that you've beaten Alabama at Alabama and won with a blueprint? Or now are you feeling better because you're Alabama that you get to go at it again?
It's a good question, but I've always heard this when you're talking about teams that aren't conference opponents. This was an out-of-conference game. One knows they can beat the other. That's Clemson in this case. They know they can beat Alabama. Alabama doesn't know yet that they can beat Clemson, and you mentioned Shiflin as the other player along with P.J. Hall. That's great size underneath. But again, with the way that Nelson, the Alabama big man, played tonight, that's an equalizer. Huge for them tonight. And again, Chase Hunter was big, the guard forward for Clemson, taking the ball to the hole and ones late in the game. My hand is up. I had Clemson out against New Mexico, and Jason Powers, it was probably recency bias because we saw how good New Mexico was in the Mountain West tournament, and they won the tournament 4 wins in 4 nights. Again, Clemson was awful in their game with Boston College in the first round of the ACC tournament. So it made too much sense to say New Mexico is going to beat Clemson. That didn't happen. Then Baylor is in front of them, and Baylor, arguably one of the most talented offensive teams in the tournament. Clemson handled them. And then tonight they're playing Arizona, and Arizona's explosive, and Arizona got the game tied a couple of times, but every time they had to make plays, Clemson made the plays, Mr. Powers.
Bart Heisch, I want to take you back to 1996. You were in a similar spot. Yeah, you're in a similar spot as a Clemson. You're an underdog going to the Sweet 16. Give us a little retrospective. Where did you go in the Sweet 16? You pull an upset in the Sweet 16 to get to a Final 8. Give us a little recap of a little perspective of just the mindset of being the underdog, and you win that Sweet 16 game.
It was friendly for us because we were playing in Rupp. And we beat Ray Allen and Deron Scheffler and Travis Knight and Jim Calhoun handily.
A big Connecticut team. A big team.
That was the Connecticut team before they won it with Richard Hamilton that everybody thought was going to win it. That was the one. Yep. And we just, we could guard people in half court. We made timely shots, and we just believed. Then we won that Sweet 16 game, but we were just playing the next play. That's what these guys are doing. They're not doing anything but going back, focused on, hey, you get to celebrate for a while, but you probably got film tonight. You definitely got treatment tonight. You got to get up in the morning and get breakfast. You'll get a little leeway, but about lunchtime tomorrow, they'll start getting locked in, and it's just you're moving on to the next game. We had Danny Fortson and Bob Huggins in that Final 8 game, and I just remember the confidence level that we had as an underdog. They're like, nobody believed. I mean, we had beaten the untouchables. We didn't care who we was playing. They had 7 first-round picks. Now, it didn't work out later on for us. Like the Final Four lights were a little bit too big. But those regional lights are not as big, guys. They're not as big as those Final Four lights when you come in that week before and the media's there and it's like in Starkville, there's like 1 million people. Point being is like they're playing the next play right now. So, I mean, Clemson – I like this game no matter what other game happens in the Final 8 to go to the Final 4 in whatever region. I really like this Clemson-Alabama game. I think it's going to be a great one.
Should be a lot of fun. Before we let you go, preview Friday. We've talked a ton about Thursday, but the Friday game we're interested in having you break down is Tennessee and Creighton. We've talked A bunch about Alabama. Let us not forget this Tennessee team beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa to basically clinch the SEC regular season title. They were a stink bomb in Nashville against somebody's Mississippi State Bulldogs, but now they've turned around and won a couple of games in the tournament over St. Peter's that they were supposed to win easily, then a close game with Texas. Meantime, Creighton, who has a win over UConn in the regular season, Creighton gets a win in a double overtime game with Oregon just to get here. Now the here is in Detroit in the Midwest Regional. Thought on Tennessee, Creighton, Bart. We value your insight.
I love Creighton, straight up. I don't trust Rick Barnes until he proves it to me. Creighton's win over UConn, if anybody watched that game, there's a gap between UConn and everybody else. Like, you can listen to anybody that comes on anything that's watched basketball. Like, there is a gap. Creighton handled them. I think they'll spread Tennessee out, guys. I really do. And I don't know if Tennessee's going to be – if a dude gets in foul trouble early, and I think you'll really see Creighton attack inside through Kalkbrenner, play through him, make a dude guard, and then – or a dude guard, and then really pitch it out and then attack the rim. I like Creighton. I just think what I've seen this tournament, I saw it up close at the Mississippi State, Michigan State game. The SEC is not as fundamental passing and dribbling, guys. It's not. It's just not. And I think like later in these rounds, times, you're going to see that. I think you're going to see the ability to pass, dribble, and shoot in this Creighton-Tennessee game for Creighton, overcome Tennessee's physicality, overcome their ability. And I think Tennessee's going to get really frustrated with the fact that they can't consistently make shots. Vescovy and Jones, if Tennessee wins, Vescovy and Jones have to have at least 30 points between them with at least like 6 or 7 threes. I mean, that's how Tennessee wins. I like Creighton straight up. That's just me.
And again, the winner's got a spot in the Elite Eight, and neither Tennessee nor Creighton has ever been to a Final Four. So somebody takes the step to be a step away from the Final Four if that's the case. Final thought, Jason, before we let Bart go.
Yeah, I know TJ's big on this game. He really thinks Duke is very live against Houston. Give me a thought about Duke, Houston, the physicality of Houston versus the little more finesse of Duke. I mean, I don't expect Houston to give up 80+ like they did, gave up 95 to A&M. I expect it to be a little more buttoned down. Give me a thought or two about Duke, Houston.
Love Houston in this game. Love the physicality.
Not good to Mr. Reeves' ears.
Well, opposite sides of the aisle.
Now, I don't like Houston to get to the Final Four, but I love Houston against Duke.
Interesting.
Guys, I like Marquette to go to the final game. I love the way they're playing. I love their offense. I love the way they spread you out. I think Shaka is ready. I love how he's got an assist in there. But I really think Houston – I think Houston overwhelms Duke early in this game. I think it's one of those games. I think it's a low-scoring game. I mean, this could be like a 70 or 65 to 51 game, something like that.
Wow.
But guys, it could be time for Kelvin too. There's just so many great storylines in it. We can talk about predictions and this and that. You can tell early in these games, though, who's hitting who in the mouth and who can take it. But I like Houston against Duke.
One team won by 30 going away last weekend in their second round game. The other team coughed up a 12-point lead in the final 2 minutes and is probably, frankly, lucky to still be here. That would be Houston. Yes. So stay tuned. And by the way, if you're calling the shot that Duke only scores 51 points in this game, I'm buying you dinner somewhere. I think
your choice.
I think they're getting more than 51 in this game, even in defeat against Houston. I just saw a Texas A&M team with an overtime get 95 on them. We'll see. We'll see what happens in that one. Listen, Bart, great stuff. I know you're going to be back on the Press Box Radio Show with Mike Grace Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. It's a great show. I appreciate and value your insight. Jason does as well, and hanging with us on college basketball coast to coast. And the SEC, very much relevant. Very much relevant Thursday, and will be again on Friday with the two teams that are left, Alabama and Tennessee. Bart, thank you, brother.
I guess roll tide, Rocky Top.
Yeah, for right now. Good stuff on that. Thank you, Mr. Heitch. We'll see you later. All right, a couple of moments left. We're already touching on Friday. Again, Illinois did win the late game. They're the UConn opponent. Big Ten Big East matchup in the Elite Eight. Somebody goes to the Final Four in that one. We have not touched on Purdue Gonzaga as the other game in Detroit, along with Creighton and Tennessee. Thoughts on Friday as we wind it down here, recapping this show, Jason?
I think the Midwest region to me is the toughest region of the four going into the Sweet 16, because I think there are three teams, Purdue, Tennessee, Creighton, that you could make a really serious argument could give Connecticut a great game and could potentially win it all. I mean, you can talk Houston and Duke a little bit, but I think those three teams, because they've got some star power, they got size, I think they could give Connecticut a really good game if they were to meet in a championship game situation. I think Gonzaga is very live tomorrow too. I think they got enough size on the front line. They got Nembhard at point guard. Purdue's not going to out athlete them at all. It's can you don't let Edey dominate the game and score 35. If they can keep him 20 to 25 points, I think Gonzaga is going to have a great chance.
Is Purdue going to be tight in this game? Kind of still regional home away from home for them. Not far from West Lafayette to get to Detroit. If Gonzaga plays anything remotely like they did in the second half against that damaged Kansas team, look out for them. NC State, what kind of puncher's chance with Marquette? Bart Heitz just said, I like Marquette to go all the way to the final game. What is your thought on NC State's chances against Marquette?
I think Kolek's going to be the difference tomorrow. I think Marquette's on a mission to at least get to the Final Eight. Great run by NC State. I know DJ Burns is going to be a load for Marquette in the middle. He's kind of an Anthony Mason kind of point forward kind of guy who initiates the offense. He's a good enough low post player. He can score some, but he's a really good passer. And boy, can NC State stay on this high? And you made a great point. Will this 4 or 5 days off, will that hurt NC State? Even the rest is good, we know, but the emotion and the rhythm that they've had in the last 12, 13 days.
You've been rolling.
Will that stop, and will that be affected? Who knows?
All right. And again, UConn wins tonight as a 1 seed. We still have Purdue and Houston alive as 1 seeds, but goodbye North Carolina as a 1, goodbye Arizona as a 2, goodbye Iowa State as a 2, as things have shaken out. All right, great stuff here tonight.
One more thing before we leave. I got to get one more thing, because today's an anniversary. We're now into Friday, but at the anniversary was Thursday. 32 years ago, Mr. Reeves.
Yes.
You got to tell me where you were at in the epic, I think, one of the 5 best college basketball games of all time. Leitner at the gun in the Spectrum from Grant Hill. The perfect game for Leitner, 10 for 10 and 10 for 10 from the line. The controversy when he stomped on the Kentucky player's chest. The unforgettables with Patino coming off the probation. Where were you at, TJ Reeves, when Leitner hit the buzzer beater in the Spectrum?
It's interesting that you bring that up, and I know you put that on social media as well. I was a senior at then Memphis State.
Yep.
And interesting, Memphis State had made the regional final, the Elite Eight. And so the next day, I was slated to be the pregame and did halftime and postgame host for their Elite Eight game against Cincinnati. Bart Heitz was talking Cincinnati earlier, and Bob Huggins in his Elite Eight victory to go to the Final Four. Memphis State lost to Cincinnati for a 4th time that year to be denied the Final Four. That was the day after.
Nick Van
Exel, Bob Huggins' team. Correct. All right, so the night before is the Kentucky Duke game, and I'm with you. That may not just be top 5. That's probably top 3.
1 or 2, yeah.
Top 3 all-time games in an NCAA tournament game. Certainly top 3 in non-championship games. Let's just put it that way. Grant Hill's pass forever lives before the Leitner shot just to get it there. Leitner, again, the perfect night. Kentucky scores 100 points and doesn't win the game. Sean Woods forever makes the go-ahead shot that nobody remembers because of the Leitner play that Duke's still living off of 4 decades later. Crazy to remember that. So that's where I didn't grasp. Where were you in 92? You were at Florida State. Am I
was
correct?
Sitting in a dorm room in Tallahassee. I mean, just watching the regional final as a freshman at Florida State, 1992 on a Saturday night with Lundquist and Elmore on the call for CBS. I mean, when all the games were on CBS back then, I mean, there was no Turner and True TV and all that. It was Saturday night. the regional final from Philadelphia.
Here's what I know, too. As a fan, I would have been there potentially as a broadcaster. They were talking about sending me as a broadcaster for the Memphis State team on the pregame, halftime, and postgame show had we won the game. Didn't win the game. Yeah, still remember it. In Kemper Arena, Kansas City, Anthony Hardaway, and Memphis State beaten by Nick Van Exel. Wow. Corey Blunt, also of Cincinnati.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. The next weekend, I was at the Metrodome in Minneapolis as a fan on a ticket, Jason Powers.
Wow.
Up in the upper deck for the Duke eventual Fab 5 Michigan National Championship. And that whole weekend was right there for all of that as it unfolded. And Duke that year went back to back. Now we bring it forward to 32 years later. That's what UConn has a chance to do. Only one team in the interim, the Florida 06-07 Florida Gators of Joakim Noah, Corey Brewer, and
Horford,
company.
Al Horford.
Al Horford and Billy Donovan's team.
Corey Brewer, yep.
They were back-to-back champions, and now UConn, again, the stat is the first defending champ to make even the Elite Eight. Forget about the Final Four. Since the Florida team of 07 to make the Elite Eight, and Florida obviously went on to win and go to the whole thing. But yeah, great nostalgia on that as well. And as we alluded to already on the program, you're going to get a first-time Final Four team because Clemson and Alabama have never been there. So whoever wins that game, somebody brand new is in the Final Four. And if Tennessee or Creighton can find a way to get there, you got two teams in the Final Four for the first time because neither one of them have ever been in the Final Four. So let's see how that plays out on Friday night. All right, great stuff. Thanks to Adam Zagoria, again, of NJ.com and the Zags blog with us earlier tonight in the arena in Boston for the UConn win over San Diego State. Bart Heitch also with us from the Press Box Radio Show at BHeitch22 on social media. Former captain on the 96 Mississippi State team that went to the Final Four.
Eric Dampier
gave us some great insight into all of that. And, of course, that's the voice of Jason Powers as well. Brother Powers, let's get some rest. And then let's recharge the batteries. And we come back and do this again on Friday night after four more teams will advance to the Elite Eight out of Houston, Duke, Marquette, NC State, and Purdue, Gonzaga, Tennessee, Creighton. Four more teams are going to advance to the Elite Eight. Let's come back and do this again on Friday night, late. What do you say?
Let's have a couple wild finishes, too. I'd love to see a buzzer beater or something like that. Let's go.
Let's get with some craziness on that. Thank you for finding us on all the social media platforms of college basketball coast to coast. If you're hearing us in podcast form after the fact on a replay or on the TuneIn College Basketball Coast to Coast channel on a replay, we'll be live on the platforms, YouTube, College Basketball Coast to Coast, Twitter at CBB Coast to Coast with the number 2, CBB Coast, the number 2 Coast, and also on Facebook. We'll be live Friday night. For now, we are good. UConn, Illinois for a spot in the Final Four out of the East. Alabama, Clemson. Everybody had that for a spot.
Not a football game. Not a football game.
Not the college football playoff title game that we saw several times, but this is a Final Four spot in Los Angeles up for grabs on Saturday. Four more teams will join them on Friday night. We'll be here to talk all about it on college basketball coast to coast.